So I would like to begin with two remarks of Roland Barthes taken from a 1966 interview. Clothing concerns all of the human person, all of the body, all of the relationships of man to body, as well as the relationships of the body to society. And the wearing of an item of clothing is fundamentally an act of meaning that goes beyond modesty, ornamentation, and protection. It is an act of signification and therefore a profoundly social act. Several interesting debates have arisen in the wake of the Me Too movement, which impact on freedom and autonomy. These include a rethinking of narratives of consent, seduction, coercion, force, restraint, harassment, flirtation, and freedom of expression in both personal and artistic contexts. In an open letter to Le Monde in 2018, 100 French women, including actress Catherine Deneuve and writer Catherine Millet, challenged some of the basic assumptions and aims of the Me Too campaign and its French equivalent, Balance ton port. In this letter, the French 100 defended la liberté d'importuner, or the freedom to pester or harass, claiming that a truly liberated sexuality rests both on the freedom to harass and the complementary freedom to say no. In response to this letter, French-Moroccan novelist Leila Slimani argued against the French 100, claiming instead the right not only to not be harassed, but to not have to say no. Slimani's response outlines, among other things, a vision of dress liberty connected quite closely to the freedom not to be harassed. The right to wear a miniskirt, a low-cut blouse, and high heels, to lie half naked in the grass, and to not be judged in the street by her clothing. The notion of dress liberty, however, extends beyond this to a more general freedom of expression. Indeed, fashion scholars such as William Keenan and Alison Lurie have argued that expressing yourself through clothing is an essential form of freedom, intimately connected to other rights and freedoms such as freedom of speech, freedom of conscience, freedom of expression, and the free exercise of personal beliefs. Nonetheless, as Keenan points out, dress liberty is precariously poised in any society at any time, and is often subject to the language of constraint, control, and compliance. This is most common, according to Keenan, in the everyday settings of work, school, and leisure. While dress liberty certainly predates Me Too, in France it can be traced back at least as far as the revolution. Women such as Slimani saw in Me Too the opportunity to raise the issue of dress liberty in a new context, relating it to the issue of women's bodies and discourses surrounding women's bodies. This paper examines the current state of dress liberty in France in light of the Me Too movement and the reaction to it. What I'm looking at today concerns what might be called post-Me Too dress liberty, and I want to touch on a few instances which created much interest in the media in France and some of their implications for Me Too, dress liberty, and nationhood. Some 3 years after Slimani's opinion piece, women's dress freedom was challenged in France, not by harassment in the street, but by France's education minister, Jean-Michel Blanquer. In response to young women wearing crop tops to school, he advised students to dress in a more Republican style. Blanquer's comments followed the hashtag Lundi 14 septembre, Monday 14 September movement, launched on social networks, which aimed to challenge the ban on certain outfits deemed indecent in schools. The protest movement was aimed at addressing, on the one hand, the perceived relationship between women's clothing choices and sexual harassment and assault, and on the other, the public shaming of women who choose to wear certain items of clothing. The hashtag started a few days prior to Monday 14 September on the social media platform TikTok, before being taken up on Twitter and Instagram. The hashtag spread on social media to protest strict dress codes and sexist comments targeting female students. Some students reported being told their outfits were too conspicuous or vulgar. And this photograph shows some of the girls who took part in the protest. In one of the signs, the phrase "protect your daughters" has been crossed out and "educate your sons" underlined. Another reads, the outfit does not justify rape. The September 14 movement invited students in middle and high schools to attend classes on that day in skirts, low necklines and crop tops, or in any outfit that would be labelled provocative or obscene according to the school's internal regulations. A social media post publicising the protest read, on Monday the 14th, the fight begins. Let's all dress indecently, to use their words. Dare to wear crop tops, short skirts, makeup. Now is the time to fight back against their sexist remarks. I invite all of you to do this, no matter your gender, female, male, non-binary. Clothes have no gender and we can wear whatever we want. We'll prove it to them. Following the post on social media, hundreds of testimonies began circulating on social networks. It was in response to this that Blanquet made his infamous remark. School is not like any other place. You don't go to school like you go to the beach or the nightclub. Everyone can understand that you come to school dressed in a Republican style. Blanquet was both mocked and criticised for his comments. Social media users reminded him that Marianne, the fictitious woman who symbolises the French Republic, is often shown bare-breasted, with many invoking Delacroix's famous painting, Liberty Leading the People. For example, the first tweet here reads, my daughter dressing in a Republican style to go to high school this morning. The second tweet reads, according to the minister in charge, you must come to school dressed in a Republican style, thus bare-chested. This image of Brigitte Bardot dressed in the tricolor flag was also invoked. Blanquet's comments also triggered reactions within the political class. Marlène Schiappa, Minister for Citizenship and former Minister for Gender Equality, tweeted her support for the movement. Young girls have spontaneously decided all over France to wear low-cut skirts, crop top or makeup to assert their freedom in the face of sexist judgments and acts. As a mother, I support them with sorority and admiration. Elisabeth Moreno, the current Minister for Gender Equality, expressed her disagreement with Blanquet's remarks. In France, everyone is free to dress as they want, she explains. Women have taken centuries to be able to free themselves from dress codes. This hard-won freedom is priceless. It is also an issue of educating young boys, of the relationship they maintain with young women and linked to the values of respect. The former Minister of Education, Nadia Belkacem, reacted to the protest in a more nuanced way, claiming that while she is not opposed to dress regulations in schools, she does not support Blanquet's reaction, particularly where a one-sided discourse projects onto young women the idea that their bodies are inherently sexual, provocative, and disturbing. In a similar way, the Greens mayor of Grenoble, Eric Piolet, claimed that the problem is not with women's clothing, but with the way men look at women. Is the crop top the problem? I don't think so. I think it's men's eyes. Let women dress as they like. We should educate men from an earlier age not to perceive women as objects. Emmanuel Macron took a more conciliatory approach when he stated that while freedom of dress is a good thing, so too are dress codes in schools, calling somewhat vaguely for a common sense approach to the subject. This is, of course, not the first time that questions of dress freedom have been an issue in French schools. In 1989, 3 French schoolgirls were suspended for refusing to remove their head coverings. This incident, referred to as the affaire du foulard, or the affair of the scarf, culminated in a ban on conspicuous religious signs in French schools. This intrusion on dress liberty was also linked to the Republic. As Peter Corrigan writes, the key to understanding French political readings of such dress is found in the notion of laïcité, which derives from a confrontation between the state and a church with overarching power pretensions. The church-state separation is enshrined in the law of 9 December 1905, where the role of the state is to be neutral with respect to religions and, by extension, to ensure that public places under its control, such as state schools, are also sites of religious neutrality. Laïcité is central to the French Republic's definition of itself. A similar incident occurred in 2016 when 30 French cities placed a ban on the burkini, a hybrid of the Muslim modesty garment, the burqa, and a wetsuit. It was reported in Nice Matin that the ban was issued to ensure that people maintain a beach dress code that respects good customs and laïcité. Again, dress code and questions of dress liberty were linked to national identity. As Sophie Fuggle remarked at the time, why are the French so worked up about a bathing suit? Because for France, the beach is more than just a coastline. It's a symbol of national identity. The beach has long been a powerful symbol in France and a repository of French national identity. In her book, Cinema at the Shore, Fiona Handyside argues that images of Brigitte Bardot in her bikini at the Cannes Film Festival constitute one of the most iconic moments in French culture. Bardot's association with Saint-Tropez and the French Riviera, and the image of her as the sexually liberated woman in Roger Vaillant's and God Created Woman, is etched into the cultural imaginary of France. In alluding to the controversies over the burkini in a speech on the 29th of August 2016, then Prime Minister Manuel Valls referred to classical visual representations of Marianne, the personification of the French Republic, claiming that Marianne has bare breasts because she is feeding the people. Valls went on to explain that Marianne was not veiled because she was free, and that the Republic should be conceived according to this image. French historian and academic Mathilde Lehrer set out in a series of tweets why Valls had been wrong to invoke Marianne to support his argument. The renowned Delacroix painting, for example, depicted liberty, she said, not a republic. Nor can Marianne's nakedness be taken as itself a prescriptive symbol of freedom, as Valls had done. She is naked, Lehrer pointed out, because Delacroix was experimenting with allegorical codes of antiquity. Lehrer also points out that Delacroix was not even a Republican. Le Figaro political correspondent Sophie de Rabinel said that Valls had gone off script to make his remarks. She also pointed out that Marianne is depicted as having both exposed breasts and a head covering. Interestingly, art has been raised again in relation to dress liberty in the post-Me Too debates. Just days before the 14th September protest, dress freedom made headlines in France, this time because a woman was denied entry to the Musée d'Orsay in Paris. The woman, known only as Jean, was refused entry because her dress was too low cut. In a tweet which quickly went viral, Jean recounted how she was told to calm down and that rules are rules, but nobody explicitly said what rules she had broken. While discussion of this incident was not linked explicitly to national identity, nonetheless, commentators were quick to point out that the gallery is renowned for some of the most famous nudes in art, all painted by renowned French artists. According to Lehrer, during the 19th century, there were two competing images of Marianne that mirrored two differing concepts of the Republic: a wise, fully clothed, unarmed Marianne, and a Marianne with a Phrygian bonnet, sword, and exposed breasts. Radical revolutionaries would espouse the naked Marianne, and more conservative Republicans, the clothed figure. These somewhat contradictory images of Marianne go some way to explaining the complex problem of dress liberty in France. In some instances, the woman is not covered enough. In others, she is too covered. There is too the difference between dress codes or traditions and law. While wearing a crop top to school or a low-cut dress to a museum, or even wearing a bikini to the beach may be considered un-French, it is not, like the wearing of the headscarf in schools, prohibited by law. The complexity is compounded by often vague and unquantifiable references to common sense or the Republic when attempting to define correct dress. As Joshua Miller points out in his article on fashion and democratic relationships, the democratic ideal contains personal freedom, equality, mutual respect, and common action. These various aspects of democracy can be expressed in clothing and appearance, even though they are sometimes in tension with one another. The mix is essential because any one of them without the others could lead in an anti-democratic direction. Interestingly, Blanca's remarks on the 14th September movement were often abbreviated when reported in the media. He qualified his remark about a Republican style of dress as follows. That is, clothing which permits a greater equality amongst all and to not differentiate oneself through clothing. Here, Blanca invokes a tension at the heart of the Republic itself between liberté and égalité. Dress liberty in France has reconfigured these ideals in an oppositional rather than complementary way. The Me Too movement did not at the outset concern itself directly with questions of dress liberty. However, the subsequent mobilization of women's rights through social media has brought both movements under the banner of fourth wave feminism, a stage of feminism that is characterized in part by a focus on the empowerment of women through the use of internet tools and social media activism. While dress liberty is not strictly a Me Too issue, it can be argued that there has been a resurgence of interest in dress liberty in the wake of Me Too in France, which has challenged the way women and what they wear are circumscribed by discourses of tradition and nationhood.